on the Bossman Show with special guest Desmond Meade, the president, executive director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, the FRC, down in Florida. Mr. Meade, let's talk to you today. How's life going for you this great Friday here today?
Well, first of all, man, what's up, boss man? Definitely a pleasure to be on your show. And let me tell you, things are happening down here in Florida, and I'm grateful to be a part of a movement, man, that is aimed towards really shifting a lot of conditions in our communities, in this country, and empowering people who have traditionally been left out of the equation.
And Mr. Meade, you all pushed for to get Amendment 4 passed down in Florida and to get returning citizens their right to vote. And this past election was your first time being able to vote yourself. So tell me, how was that for you, knowing all the work you put forward in Amendment 4 and you actually got to the Amway Center and go actually cast your vote for the first time in your life there?
Man, let me tell you, I have competing emotions, man, because for on one side you have my experience, and we'll talk about that, but I also got to point out that there's another competing piece here because in Georgia, y'all just went through the elections in January, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that the runoffs. There were so many stories that came out of Georgia, returning citizens in Georgia that got to vote, right, for their first time, and many of them was able to get the inspiration from the work we did here in Florida, right? And so when I get to see, returning citizens across the country, or in other states that are participating and being a part of that process, man, that's huge, man. And it competes with my personal experience, because I can tell you, I got into this work not to make it better for me. I got it into this work to make it better for other folks, right? It was always other people that I just put at the top of the list. And so to see the impact that we having across the country was huge. But let me tell you about my personal experience, man. Let me tell you, August of 2020 in our primary elections, I got to vote for the first time in over 30 years. The last time I had voted before that was when I was just graduated high school. I just got my voter registration card, and I walked a few blocks from my house and I went to vote. And I didn't understand the significance of what I was doing. It was not, it wasn't that important for me. And so years after that, I didn't vote. And then finally, when I did get a felony conviction, I couldn't vote even if I wanted to vote. Right. And so it wasn't until I got involved in the work back in 2006 that I really started appreciating the importance of being able to vote. And even then, even working from 2006 all the way up to 2020, I still didn't fully grasp that impact of being able to cast that ballot until I was walking up to the voting location. And I remember as I was walking, I started thinking that I was actually walking for that moment symbolically on hallowed ground, right? Because my mind went back to my ancestors, man.
Oh, yes.
They were beaten, they were burned, they were hung on trees, they were just outright murdered to prevent them from, number one, registering to vote, and then number two, to actually voting. So we had our ancestors, and I can't stress this enough, man. Even in the face of the voter suppression that we're facing today, right? We had our ancestors that faced almost certain death just to register to vote.
Oh, yes.
And then they had to choose, if they got lucky enough to get through the gauntlet, they had to do it again just to go and vote, right? And, just to put it in perspective, today we can register to vote in the comfort of our own homes in many states, and we can mail in a ballot, right? And so, but as I was walking up to the voting location, I thought about all of those sacrifices being made, blood being shed for democracy, and I thought about all the work that the volunteers put in to pass Amendment 4. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm walking on hollow ground. And I got in there, man, and they gave me my ballot, and I went into that booth. And that booth was big enough for just me. actually me and God, you know?
Yes, sir.
And as I was, choosing my candidates, I realized that I was engaging in a sacred act, and how that act that I was engaging in by voting actually transcended partisan politics. It transcended the racial biases. Again, because when I was there engaging in this act of voting, I wasn't voting as a Democrat or a Republican or a black, or I was voting as a human being. And that the
Yes.
act of voting took me to a place that said something so simple. It said that I am. But that was the most powerful thing it could have said. It almost like it validated my existence as a human being within a society, and that my voice mattered, and it made a difference, and that I had a role to play in impacting how my society is governed, right?
Yes, sir.
That was huge. That was huge, man.
Yes, sir. And after all these years of work, and finally you get to actually see the fruits of your labor. After all those years of work, I watched the video and how happy you were, that the joy you had as you broke it down here. Like, I'm happy for you, because I understand that returning citizens are treated like second class citizens. How you pay the debt to society. Let them have their rights again. Like, they count return guys in prison as part of the census, but when they get out, they can't vote, or they won't let them vote inside. But
Oh,
you
you
count them
want
as part of the census population to get money, you know?
to?
So that's another
And you
story for
take
another
out
day.
taxes, and you take out taxes, right? Whatever happened to that with that rallying cry, the Boston Tea Party? There should be no taxation without representation, and
Yes.
yeah, it's just so much, and we have, and it gets a little complex because it's been part of that narrative, man, that said that we're not worthy, right? That we're not worthy because we committed a crime, or actually because we got caught, right? Because that's the difference between me and 90% of the people in this country. I'm gonna tell you that right now, because we've all done. Matter of fact, let me back up for a minute. In Florida, right now, boss man, you have been to Florida,
Yes, I
right?
have
We
many
had this
times.
thing say, you come to Florida on vacation, you probably end up leaving on probation, right?
Yes.
Because listen, in Florida, it's a felony offense if you drive with a suspended license. If
Mm.
you're on the beach, you disturb turtle nesting eggs, that's a felony. You go lobster hunt, you catch a lobster tail too short, that's a felony. You walking from the hotel to Wendy's, and rather than going a long way, you cross this construction site, trespassing on the construction site, felony. And one of my favorites was this brother. Um, well, I'm gonna say this man. He for Valentine's Day, right? Rather than give his girl a dozen roses, what he did was get 12 red balloons and he released them in the air. That's a felony offense in Florida.
Wow.
So you go into these like memorials with the white balloons, and you want to release the white balloons in the air, or you got the balloons like happy birthday or congrats grad, and that's a felony offense in the state of Florida. And
Wow.
so, to think that something as simple as releasing balloons in the air, right, or burning a tire in public, or driving with a suspended license would cause you to lose the right to vote for the rest of your life, right? It said that you don't matter, your voice don't count, right? And when you have over policing, particularly in the African American community,
Yes,
that
sir.
means that there's a significant impact in those African American communities that diminishes the political capital there. Therefore, politicians don't have to deal with those situations. Now, listen, I don't know how controversial you get on your show, right? But I'm
Very,
gonna keep it real,
very.
right? That's one of the reasons why when we seen, even when President Barack Obama, when he was elected, right? And you remember they had the shooting in Connecticut, right? Where all of
Sandy Hook,
the
yes.
Sandy Hook, right? Right. And so we're thinking, oh, that okay, he's gonna address this gun violence thing, right? But he didn't do it in a way that actually addressed the gun violence that we experience in urban communities, right?
Right.
And I remember there was some pastors and that went up to the White House, and at the time Biden was the a vice president, and these pastors being told that there's not enough political capital in the communities to raise those issues, right?
Wow.
And that's being real. And even when President Obama, when he won his second term, I went to that inauguration. I heard the speech, and I was there. And I remember being with brothers from all over, whether from Georgia or from Illinois, and Philly or whatever. And we were like excited because he started talking about LGBTQ rights. You know, he started. I mean, he was going there, and we just knew he was going to lift us up, right? And it was so disappointing because that time he took the oath, swearing on the Bible of Martin Luther King Jr., right? But it goes back to not having the political capital. Therefore, it was not politically expedient to even
Mm-hmm.
lift those issues up.
Oh yes.
And so, this thing that we did with Amendment 4 was the pathway to reverse that trend and to increase political capital in our communities, which now makes us a significant factor, right, in any election, whether, and it's not just presidential, and we got state attorney or DA races,
Local
sheriff races,
school board.
judicial races, school boards, that now they just cannot, no, they can no longer just blatantly ignore the cries from the African American community. And the fight for reenfranchising people who've been impacted by the criminal justice system is the thing that will take us over the top.
And Mr. Meade, there's these laws I'm hearing to me sound like vote suppression. If you ask me, they're on the books to suppress the votes because we're gonna say they're more like to commit these type of crimes, so they'll keep them off the road so we can do what we want to do.
Well, you know, the history basically, and I think we could, and I don't want to minimize the advocacy around voter suppression, right? But I think we minimize the argument when we limit it to voter suppression. I think it's bigger than that. It's a blatant attack against democracy, right?
Yes.
So when we go back to the roots, we've seen these type of laws. We've seen the emergence of these laws after the slaves were emancipated, right? And so when you have that slave owner in Georgia, right, that own that plantation with 200 slaves, right, and it's only 10 family members there, and all of a sudden those 200 slaves got the right to vote, and they're supposed to be equal to you, and you see those slaves actually use the right to vote, and all of a sudden people, former slaves, are being elected into Congress and in commissions and becoming sheriffs or mayors or whatever, right? That's a scary thought to those 10 people who knew for decades they've been abusing those
Oh
very
yes.
same people that now have power over them. And so, they had to employ some type of strategy to strip those people of the right to vote. And so while in some places you lose the right to vote for hitting your wife, you wouldn't lose the right to vote for killing your wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the laws that they were choosing to disenfranchise you with were laws that they would think, or offenses that they would think that the newly freed slaves would be more prone to committing, right? And so you've seen the system that was set up to where, if vagrancy, right, if you get caught with vagrancy, if you don't have a good job, a job or whatever, that now you can get arrested, you can get convicted, you can get thrown into jail, and then what? Why you in? So you're going to lose your right to vote. So you'll have no more say in that. And now, while you in jail, now I could outsource you as prison labor right back into the same fields that you was just liberated from, right? And and so it's all a part of this big process. And then the other piece is, how do I erect other barriers? Say, okay, well, you've got to pay poll taxes, unless you can
Mm-hmm.
show this or that, which a slave, that a person that's recently been emancipated would not be able to show, or literacy tests, which that you made it a crime to teach a slave to read,
Exactly.
right? And so and then even if that don't work, right? Because we are a resilient people, right?
Very.
Even if that don't work, then we use state sanctioned violence to intimidate you, right? And we know that the state sanctioned violence was, and you talk about the KKK, all of that came out of the slave patrols, right? Which, you know, we know that that has evolved into law enforcement now, the police
Oh,
departments,
yes.
right? And so all of that you see prevalent because I mean, even as recent as I know that there are other incidents, but the ones that I can speak of is in Ferguson, when police officers were patrolling voting locations looking for people with outstanding warrants or something like that, right? So intimidating people from going to the polls, and so that it's all that part of that process. And at the end of the day, yeah, we could say voter suppression, but what I believe is bigger than that. It is really a blatant attack against democracy, right?
Yes.
It's a blatant attack against democracy, and it's a handful of people that want to control who gets to vote or who gets to decide who leads their communities or the country.
And
And that's not what democracy is all about.
it's a shame for Mr. Meade that in Georgia now, due to SB 202, giving someone some water or food is now illegal. We have some people standing in line for 8-9 hours. I know in the primary in June, it was a rainy day here, Mr. Meade. It was raining, humidity here in Atlanta, Georgia. People standing in line for hours, and the machines didn't work in Fulton and DeKalb County. I wonder why, but they worked in Cobb and Gwinnett County and Douglas County. I wonder why. So it's so obvious what they're doing.
Yeah.
We just have to keep fighting against it, organizing, mobilizing against it, and try to get our people engaged and inspired to overcome, as our people I've always done in our life, Mr. Meade, overcome.
Yep, we got the numbers, man. At the end of the day, I never forget. I think it's one of the things that they used to say at the NAACP, and you don't hear much of it now. But the piece that said, "We the willing, led by the unknown, doing the impossible for the ungrateful." We've done so much for so long with so little. We're not qualified to do anything with nothing, right? And so, when I tell folks that these laws that we're seeing are designed to pick people off on the fringes, right? And so, how do you respond to suppression? Well, to me, I'm a former military guy. Whenever you get an ambush, there's only one way that you have to survive that ambush. If you try to run away from it, you're going to get gunned down. If you freeze, you're going to get gunned down. The only hope you have of surviving an ambush is by attacking the ambush. And so how we respond to suppression is with aggression. If you're going to implement these laws to pick people off at the fringes, all right, so you got this law that's going to knock off 100 voters in my county. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go register 1,000 voters, and I'm going to have them come and turn out, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm going to do. And so we just have to keep pushing, bro. Because at the end of the day, it's only a handful of people, right? It's only a handful of people, and we speak loudest with our votes.
Yes.
With our votes. I tell folks that when you walk into that voting booth, you have just as much power as the richest person in the world. That's the one equalizer that you can find in this world. You got just as much power as the president of the United States. One man, one vote. And so we just have to utilize it. And when we look at the data, man, our number tells us that we have more than enough to overcome the things that we need to overcome.
And Mr. Meade, I love when you had more than a vote help you all pay off the return citizens fees, because that's another issue too. You get out of prison, you're turning back to your life, but you can't pay these outstanding fees. And to me, it's a modern day poll tax. You've already did your time, served your sentence. Now you on top of that make me pay all these fees back so I can't vote. So like you said, it's always an extra layer to prevent you from getting to have that sacred moment in that booth. But your organization and More Than a Vote, partnering with you and others who donated, Pledge Coalition as well, helped you all pay your return citizens fees, get them to vote in 2020 and beyond.
Man, More Than a Vote has been like a bomb organization to collab with, man. And I'm gonna tell you, yeah, they did that, right? But let me tell you, right? The they donated a specific amount of money to help people pay off fines and fees, and that's transformative in itself. But they brought more than just money to the table, right? That was just as impactful, if not more, right? Because you remember what I told you, there were some brothers in Georgia that I was registered to vote and voted in the runoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they seen what was happening in Florida, and a lot of them, how they seen it was through the collab with More Than a Vote, right? And so, being able to work with Michael Vick, because Michael Vick, he started his time as a Hawk, right? A Falcon, was it?
Yes, it's the Dirty
As a
Birds. Yes,
Falcon.
indeed.
And he lives in Florida now, and he couldn't vote, and so we were able to connect, and I was personally able to walk Michael Vick through that process, and they decided they wanted to document that, right? And they put that out there about Michael Vick talking about what voting meant to him and what we were doing to fight for the rights of returning citizens to vote. And there were people across the country that seen that and got inspired, and there were people that voted because of that, and those numbers far exceeded the amount of people that we were able to pay off fines and fees with the money that More Than a Vote gave us. And so there is like so many ways, that they stood up. Of course, Players Coalition, they did their thing too as well. And so we, at the end of the day, I think it was we was able to show what happens when advocates and athletes can come together, right? That we can do amazing things, and it's not athletes just trying to think that they know what's up and do things on their own, right? It's actually athletes really connecting with grassroots organizations on the ground that's doing that work and saying how can we be helpful, and that's a beautiful relationship that we enjoy even to this day, and we're looking to expand on it because there's still more people, bro. We just got through celebrating Juneteenth, right? Last year we did Vote Teeth, right? And here's the thing, right? Because the ironic thing was that in the Juneteenth story was that the slaves in Galveston didn't find out that they were emancipated until 2 years after, right?
Yes.
And so last year, 2020, it was exactly 2 years after we passed Amendment 4. And there are still hundreds of thousands of returning citizens that don't even know Amendment 4 passed, or much less
Oh,
what it
wow.
is. There's hundreds of thousands of returning citizens that didn't even know they're free yet, right? And they've been free since 2018. But let's expand this, boss man. There were people living in Georgia and other states that thought that they couldn't vote because they had a felony conviction. And
Mm-hmm.
there's still people like that. In Georgia, once you do your time, you can vote, right? And there's people that don't know that. And so, you know, when we able to work with organizations like More Than a Vote or sports teams, hopefully we get them Hawks, to do some things with us too as well,
Oh,
right?
yes.
But when we're able to work with them, we're able to expand the message or amplify the message, and they're to let people know that they're free. So every day is a Juneteenth for us, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Every day we let some folks, some brothers and sisters know, hey, brother, sister, you're free. You're actually free. And let me tell you, I've seen it time and time again. That moment that that person realized that they're free, how that weight is lifted off of them. But I got to say it. I'm gonna shut up. I know you
No,
got a question to ask
no,
me,
you good.
but
No, you're
but let me
good.
share this story. This brother got on Facebook last election cycle, and this is what he said. He said, "I got to admit to y'all." He was sitting in his car. He just got through voting. He said, "I got to admit to y'all. All these years I've been watching y'all vote. I've actually been jealous of y'all."
Wow.
And I know what he was feeling because it was so many of us that during the election season, we'll play it off like, man, my vote no count. It don't matter. We'll play that stuff off like it don't bother us. But man, let me tell you, man, being able to participate in an election, right? Being able to vote, say that you're a part of something. And when you're not able to vote, you don't feel a part of. And I don't care who you are or how hard you think you are, everybody want to be a part of something,
Yes.
right? Everybody want to be a part of something. And so this brother was like, yeah, all these years he was jealous. And he finally got the opportunity to vote. He's sitting in his car crying. I'm crying right along with him because the thing was emotional,
Oh yes.
But to know, man, that I know the burden that people have been carrying, and they probably just forgot about it. But the minute that somebody run up on them and say, "Brother or sister, you free, man. You can vote." That conviction you had 5, 10, 15 years ago, that can't hold you back on this, bro.
Oh
You
yes.
can register to vote right now, and you could choose who you want to run your community or whatever. And when they realize that, you actually see the weight lifted off of them, and the tears in their eyes, and or the joy. You see that. And so we got many brothers and sisters that still think that they're in felon disenfranchisement slavery. And we need to let them know that they've been emancipated. They've been emancipated.
Most definitely. Speaking of sports, Mr. Meade, tell us about your relationship with Stan Van Gundy. He's a great dude. Coach Van Gundy's always been one to be for the us and our people, and being out, going to prisons and again teaching in prisons and helping, and got behind you Amendment 4 early. So tell us about the relationship with Coach Van Gundy.
Wow, man. Let me tell you something, man. Coach Van Gundy, man, is, you know, to me, he's a beacon of hope, man. Sometimes in this society, you can get, call the person get so jaded, man. Especially when you talk about the white black thing and white privilege and this and that, and I mean, some of this rhetoric would have you scared to talk to white folks, right? But let me tell you, Van Gundy, for years we have known him. For years, he's been supportive of not only our efforts, man, but any effort that promotes social justice and, and ending racial disparities and stuff like that, man. He's a guy that he puts his money where his mouth is. He puts his time where his mouth is, and he shows up, man, in just so many different ways. And so I look at him as a beacon of hope because, he's a good emissary, man, that shows, man, that listen, that we can come together along racial lines and actually be effective and move something and accomplish some things and move issues that people would thought was impossible. Van Gundy was in from almost the very beginning with Amendment 4. You know, when other experts thought that Amendment 4 was a waste of time or whatever, Van Gundy was like, "No, I'm with this. This is the right thing to do," and he showed up, and whenever we called, he was there. And so there's mad props to Coach Van Gundy because I think he gets it, man. He gets it, and what I love the most about it in that aspect is the fact that even he gets it with the understanding that he doesn't know everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he knows his role. You know what I'm saying? And I guess as a coach, you I guess you should do that, right? Because listen, you can't have the shooting guard trying to be work outside their lane.
Yes,
That's gonna mess
indeed.
the whole team up. Everybody got to know their role on the team. And if I guess because he coaches that so much, he knows his role, and even in the advocacy world, he knows the lane that he's supposed to be in, and he's very clear with that, and he shows up in a powerful way.
And last one I got for you, Steve Clifford, on that on coach and athletes part, because I know I asked him questions about you before doing pre-game conferences. He talked about how you talk to the team about the issues, and the guys reach out to you, and he reaches out to you. Tell us about your relationship with Coach Clifford and your Orlando Magic, how you all work together as well.
Yeah, so so I got one complaint against Coach Clifford. He didn't have me come back enough, right? Because I don't know if he told you the one time he had me speak. It was before it was the game that they won in the playoffs, right? And he was supposed to bring me back. I said, "Listen, you don't break the trend, man. I'm a little superstitious. Let me come back and talk to the guys. We win more games, right?" But nah, let me tell you seriously, Coach Clifford, man, the one thing when I think of him when I hear his name, I see his face, the word that pops out to me more than anything else is love. Man, that dude got some genuine love for folks, man. He don't care about the color of your skin, your political preference, none of that. He just loves people, man. And then he got a extra weak spot for the kids. You know, I just see so much compassion and empathy and love that just pours out of this brother, man. And I call he white, but I call him a brother, man, because you remember, just because you my color don't make you my kind, right? And
Exactly.
and and that's a real brother, man. I'm telling you, I got to give him mad props. I don't know what he did in his past life or prior to meeting him, but what I know is that from the time, the first moment that I met him, he had a love for the community, and it was because of him that we have formed a strong bond with Orlando Magic here in Florida. And you know, and he was very clear from the start. I don't want to engage in some superficial stuff. I want to get down and deep into the issues that are impacting the communities, and I want to be I want to be an ally. I want to be an ally to the folks, to the organizations that don't get the attention, but they're doing the work. You know what I'm saying? And I want to be able to try to support that any way I can. And he's that's the type of man that he's always showed me that he is. And I'm really appreciative of him. I mean, my whole family loves him. But I'm telling you, there's this competition between Coach Van Gundy and Coach Clifford, because the family crazy about all of them, and so we're trying to figure who gets most props, man. And right now they neck and neck, man.
You got there right. You know what I'll tell you. I'll tell you honestly. As a kid, I was grew up here with the Hawks. I was a Magic fan. I loved Shaq and Penny Hardaway when I was a kid. So because the Hawks wasn't as good as they were now. So back when I was younger, I was cheering for Shaq and Penny Hardaway. So I have some Magic gear in my old closet. I have some Magic gear still to this day.
Really? Wow,
Yeah.
we actually, I got some Magic shirts now. And one of the things that they partnered up with us real quick on was you how do we use ball players to get people more engaged around voting and get them to be more excited about it. And we came up with this slogan: get off the bench and get in the game. Right? Vote. You know, that at the end of the, and matter of fact, you're seeing this stuff play out even right now in the playoffs. We and I talked to them about it, you know, about when the Heat was winning their championships, that, you know, you got your superstars on the squad. You know, you got them. But guess what? One thing we know, that they could either get in foul trouble, that they could get tired, right? Or they can get hurt. But at some point, these superstars are going to come out of the game. And when they come out, the bench got to come in, and the bench
Mm-hmm.
got to at least maintain status quo, or you know what I'm saying. But you don't want the lead to widen when the bench is in the game, right? And so if the bench could just maintain the lead, or at least, or even maintain the deficit, and give the starters time to come back in there and then try to make a final run and take them over the top, that's good. Now, if the bench could even lessen the deficit, right, or expand the lead, that's even better.
Even better.
The team that goes like the furthest is the ones whose bench can step up in crunch time and deliver. And the whole thing was that in this game of life, right, there's two groups of people that's getting in the game no matter what, right? And they're going to be returning citizens, right? Because 95% of people who are locked up, they get released back into our community. And then our young folks, right? As they
Yes.
coming up out of high school, they getting in the game whether we like it or not. And so if we want to win that championship, we got to make sure that our players that's coming off the bench are prepared to be successful as possible, right? And so that was part of the thing behind get off the bench and get in the game, right? That you just can't sit on the sideline and
Oh
complain
no.
about what's going on. You may know you got to go ahead and get in this game, right? And we want to fight to make sure that when you're trying to get in the game, that you're prepared as possible so you can do your thing.
Let me
And
ask you
that
about
bench is going to be
this.
key.
Let me ask you about this, Mr. Meade. Fighting against the FDC about the ban on mail coming to the jails. I feel like the inmates need that from their families and friends to give them hope. That's the way to the outside world. You're going to ban physical mail? I don't understand why they would do that. And if the FDC there.
You know, let me tell you, it's already been proven. right? That if there's a bond between a person who is incarcerated and their family on the outside, that leads to successful reintegration and, of course, reduced recidivism. One of the things, I got a partner of mine, Marcus Bullock, based out of DC. He started this company called Flick Shop. And Flick Shop, what it does, it's like the Instagram for prisons, and it allows family members to take like selfies and have them delivered to their loved ones as postcards, right? Part of that process was the experience that he had when he went into prison as a juvenile, and the only thing that kept him there, or the main thing that kept helped him to survive, was the fact that his mother made a commitment to write him, I think like every week or every day, right? And so to be able to have that connection, and research has showed this, and so for FTC or any other entity to engage in the practice of trying to reduce that, it runs in it contradicts what they're. If you're about safety, right, and if you're about successful rehabilitation, successful reentry, if you're about that, then you should not be engaging in things that would increase the likelihood of a person commit more crime and not being able to successfully reintegrate back into their community. So that right there, to me personally, I would just look at the money. I follow the money trail, because anytime I see things that don't make sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? If there's not a political angle to it, there's a financial angle to it, right? And so you just follow the money. Just follow the money, and you'll know why folks are doing what they're doing.
I got two more for you. How are you all gonna go about trying to transform this parole and probation system? Because I feel like it's set up against us. If you make one slight error,
Yeah.
you
So
back inside.
man, you hitting all of the topics, man. And so one of the things that the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, man, we got some key partnerships, right? You already talked about the Players Coalition. You already talked about More Than a Vote, but we also got a partnership with Reform Alliance, right? And Reform Alliance is the organization that was pretty much spearheaded by the Meek Mill incident, right, where Meek Mill was on probation forever and a day, and then Jay-Z and Robert Kraft and a few other folks, Mike Novogratz with Galaxy Gives, they all came together and said, no, we're going to do something about it. We're going to address this thing about parole. And so they've been on a much broader national scale. They've been really leading those efforts. And we've been partnering with them on that, because and some of the things that we're doing now, we have this campaign called Give Life Back, right, coming out of Reform Alliance, and it's highlighting the fact that people were being violated for doing some natural things that everybody else would do, right? You getting violated for going to work. You know what I'm saying? You getting violated. One person, because of a hurricane, their house was destroyed. They had to move to another house because they didn't get permission. They got violated, right? Got violated for going to get prescription medicine. Their daughter was sick, and they had to go get some medicine. Oh, you left the house after hours, after curfew. Man, my daughter was sick, but that doesn't matter. You violated, right? And so there's so many stories that exposes the flaws of this probation system, and we're working hard to try to number one, to raise awareness, right? Because it's very important. Trust me. Because here's the deal. Let me back up for a second.
Take your time.
When you seen the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? When the United States dropped the atomic bomb on these two Japanese cities, um, one of the key things was that they, before they did that, they had to engage in a propaganda campaign that painted the Japanese people as dangerous, scary, right? People that was a threat to the American people, and they did it in such a way that's so powerful that when the United States dropped the bomb that killed hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of innocent women and children and men, rather than they be outraged, there was a celebration. Just think about that. That people was actually celebrating the murder of innocent women and children, right? But that's the power of a narrative, and that narrative that says that we were dangerous and violent and all kinds of stuff, right? And it give us these labels that we're felons and convicts. All of those things are designed to do two things, and that is to dehumanize us,
Hmm.
right? And to desensitize that person towards our plight. And so you're not concerned about how people are getting treated in prison because those are dangerous criminals anyhow. They don't deserve anything. Man, I mean, there was a time when people said, "Why the hell do they have TVs there? They shouldn't even have a TV." Shoot, I can't afford cable. Why should they watch TV? Right? They're criminals, and that attitude created an environment where, like we know, we talk about this George Floyd and all this, man, that stuff is happening years and years and years and years and years ago, right?
Exactly.
But if a person with a record is saying that the police is doing something wrong, who gonna believe the person with a record? Because you're a criminal, you're not worthy of being trusted, and all this kind of stuff, right? And even the NAACP and the ACLU, they weren't trying to take up our cases because we weren't the perfect victim. You know what I'm saying? And let's just be real. So this
Oh,
stuff has
yes.
been in our community growing and growing. Probation, all this is tough on crime, no strikes, 3 strikes, you're out, no child left behind. All of that stuff comes out of this narrative. And we've seen it reinforced in the 94 crime bill that created a lot of these policies that did nothing but destroy our communities and tear our families apart. And guess what? Society was no less safer, right?
Correct.
And so part of this process is how are we rolling back that narrative, right? Because before I can get you to put pressure on a senator or elected official to revise probation policies, I first got to have you understand that the people that are suffering are worthy to be treated humanely, right? That the
Right.
people that are impacted by that, right, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And their families who also bear the impact of that deserves better than that, right? And so when I get you to that point, when I get you to not look at me as a no good person that you don't care what matters to them, and see me as, wow, Desmond, that's time 100. You know what I'm saying? That well, he went from a crackhead and homeless and having all these convictions to being one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So he can do something positive. He do have something
Yes.
to give, right? So understanding that those people that are incarcerated are human beings that have the potential to be contributing members of our community, and they have something to offer, not only for our communities, but their families, can now make me want to say, okay, you know what? That stuff right there, it don't make no sense. It ain't right. Let's change it.
Yes. And the last one I got for you, this is kind of personal for you as well. The Florida process for clemency. And I know you went before that board last year, and it didn't go the way we wanted it to go. Now it's a new process in Florida. Tell us about that. And I also saw you partnering with the Biden administration about trying to have on the federal level, getting a pardon basis there for those guys as well, on a pardon play on that level. So talk about all those things, Mr. Meade, that for listeners out here in Georgia and beyond.
Boss man, I'm so I'm number one. I'm impressed, but slightly hurt. Right, that you did that research. You got all this intel on me, right? So I'm waiting for you to ask me about my book.
Oh, I was on doing a bonus too. I was looking at the time, but I got you in the book too.
Yeah, but no, seriously, one of the reasons why we did start the Amendment 4 campaign was because we knew that the clemency system was flawed, right? It was flawed. You had 4 politicians that decided which American citizen get the vote and which don't get the vote, and they didn't even have a criteria. There was no set standard. So the decisions was pure arbitrary, right? And we've seen the abuses of it, right? In one case, you would see in 4 years, over 155,000 people were able to get their rights restored. And then the next governor comes in, and in 8 years, less than 5,000 people were able to get their rights restored. And you see cases where African American man or woman that's done amazing work or whatever, turned their lives around, went and said, Governor, would you give me my rights? And the governor said, denied. Matter of fact, before he said denied, he said, oh my God, you did an amazing job turning your life around. Very proud of you. Denied, right? And then you'll see immediately after that, a white person would come up and didn't do nothing but say, Governor, if I had my rights, I'll vote for you. Granted, you know what I'm saying? Then they rights get, what kind of stuff is that, right? At the end of the day, full politicians should not have that much power to determine who get the vote and who don't get the vote. This same scenario played out when I went to appear before the clemency board to get a pardon, right? And the thing about pardon or clemencies is that it's based on what you've done after you have committed your crime, right? What have you done after you have served your time, paid your debt back to society? Well, bro, I mean, my record speaks for itself. My work was so impactful that I was named Floridian of the Year, Central Floridian of the Year. And then Time Magazine said I was one of the 100 most influential people in the world, and had everybody from Jesus Christ all the way to Michael Jackson writing me a letter of recommendation. So it's all there, yet I still get denied, right? And so it ain't, right there tells you it's not about what you've done, right? It's about something else, if anything at all. But so it was very disappointing, because if me, who've done all these things, can't even get not even locked down for a pardon, what it says about the average guy who,
Exactly.
he did his time, he served his time, but he moved on with his life, probably started his own company or whatever, provided for his family, being an amazing dad, amazing community member, and he can't get his rights restored, or he can't, get a pardon, and so it is an extremely flawed system. And then even on the federal level, it's a mess. It's a mess. At the end of the day, it's too doggone complicated. And so I'm hoping that we could do some work with the Biden administration to revise that, and create a more streamlined process and a more fair process that would allow people to get some form of clemency from the president in the years to come.
And last, that's true. Is last one. The bonus is ask us, tell people how to get your book, and let my people vote, and what inspired you to write this book. And I tell you what, it's very powerful. So people should get the
Let
book.
my people vote. Let
Yes.
my people vote. All you got to do is Google it, Amazon.com, or you can go to DesmondMeade.com, DesmondMeade.com to order my book. And it's an audio version as well. And it's my voice you're going to hear. It's not going to be any robot or some strange man or woman reading my book. It's going to be me. My wife made me do it. But, I wrote it for the same reason I had fussed at Time Magazine folks, right? Because that year that I made the list, they had The Rock on the cover.
Wow.
Right. And I was like, how the hell y'all going to have The Rock on the cover of this, right? I mean, y'all should have had me on the cover, right? And the reason why I said that, right, because here's the thing, right? And this is what this book is, one of the purposes of this book is to let folks know, man, that you don't have to be a movie star or an athlete or a billionaire to have an impact in your community, your country, or even the world.
Yes.
Right? That, man, look at that guy, Desmond. He was a crackhead. He was homeless. He had a rap sheet a mile long. If this guy who was standing in front of railroad tracks in 2005, waiting on a train to come so he could jump in front of it, if this guy there, if he could turn his life around and influence the world, then what does that say that I can do? And people need to know that in spite of the obstacles that they may be facing in life, in spite of the things that they may have done in the past that may have caused them shame or disappointment, in spite of all of that, right, that there is a pathway to take all of that stuff and do a Lauryn Hill and turn a negative into a positive and be an impact in your community, in this country, in the world. And they have real life proof that that can happen. And that's what this book is about, right? Showing people that no matter where you are in life right now, you know what I'm saying, that you can make a difference. You can be something real special.
Yes, sir. Mr. Meade, it's been an honor to talk to you. I've been a fan of yours from afar. Happy to make this happen. When I come down to Florida this summer here to hang out and make sure we connect, I can come see you. Because I come to Tampa, Orlando, Miami, and I got a friend in Mariana, close at Chipola. So I make all my rounds from the Panhandle all the way down to Miami. I make my rounds when I come down to Florida.
Well, you know what? Hey, please hit me up when you do. And then I hit you up when I come to Atlanta, because I know it's amazing organizations in Atlanta that's led by returning citizens, man. And listen, I'm excited to really link up with folks in Atlanta and keep on building, man. You know, we got some success in the runoff, but you don't stop now. You got to keep grinding.
Yes, sir.
Because trust me, I tell folks this, right? I remember when people are like, why should I vote? Or why you think my vote is important? I said, listen, you might not realize how important your vote is, but let me tell you this. If it wasn't valuable, there wouldn't be so many people trying so hard to stop you from voting.
Amen.
That in itself will tell you that. And so you seen the response, what we seen, right, with the voter suppression laws is a direct response to the work that, so y'all must have did something good, right?
Yes.
And so they coming at it. So that means you got to grind even harder, right? You got to grind even harder, man. We can't get back-to-back titles unless we grind it. Just because we won year one, that don't mean you're going to ask Steph. You got to up your game, man. You got to up your game. So, hey, I'm down. I'm ready, willing, and able. You know, y'all are neighbors anyhow, you know, and listen, you come down, we can link up. I come up, I definitely want to link up with you, other returning citizens in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Especially in the ATL area.
Ferg says Desmond Meade here on the Bossman Show. Check this out, bossmanshow.com.